How to visit the fairy pools on the Isle of Skye? It's easiest to drive to the fairy pools on the Isle of Skye. It's near Glenbrittle, in quite a remote area of the island. This is 20 miles from Portree, or a 45-minute drive. Also 11 miles from Sligachan Bridge, or a 30-minute drive right south. You'll be driving down a long single lane with passing places for the majority of the drive, so make sure to go carefully and with consideration. It can get very busy with visitors, so lots of waiting. If you're not driving, there is a bus service that will drop you off at the fairy pools from Portree on the Isle of Skye. The fairy pools bus only runs from Monday to Friday in the summer months and is run by Stagecoach T54. Alternatively, you can get the CityLink bus from Inverness to Sligachan Bridge, then arrange a taxi to the fairy pools. The fairy pools postcode is Glenbrittle, Isle of Skye, 447 8TA. Fairy pools opening times. The fairy pools are open 24 hours a day, so you can visit anytime you like on the Isle of Skye. Skye's fairy pools are also free to visit, but you do have to pay for parking. Skye Fairy Pools parking. There is a large gravel fairy pools car park that is close to the start of the fairy pools walk on Skye. Although it can get really busy, there always seems to be enough parking spaces. It's really well managed, and you'll be guided to a parking space by the attendants who work here. If you are in need of some refreshment after your hike to the fairy pools or need a toilet, don't worry, you will find both facilities at the car park. Why are they called fairy pools? The crystal clear water of the fairy pools in Scotland is said to contain a certain amount of magic, hence the name. There are many fairy legends on the Isle of Skye. The most famous is the fairy flag legend of Dunvegan Castle, which is somewhat related to the fairy pools. The story goes that the chieftain of Clan MacLeod of Dunvegan married a fairy princess, or aberdeen seer, one of the shining folk. That's why so many places on the Isle of Skye, especially in the Dunvegan estate area, have the name fairy. Fairy pools history. Although we know this area as the fairy pools today and it is relatively peaceful, years ago this was the location of the vicious battle of Quiraing in 1601. The fight was between the MacLeods of Dunvegan and the MacDonalds of Sleat. This fight was so bloody, the fairy pools ran completely red that day. Reports were fed to the Scottish Crown, and they were so horrified they were forced to call a truce. It was to be the last clan battle on the Isle of Skye. What are the fairy pools in Scotland? The fairy pools in Scotland are a series of beautiful rock pools with cascades and waterfalls that are formed in tributaries of the River Brittle. In Gaelic, their name is Alt Coir a Mahadaid, which roughly translates into Burn of the Wolf. They are overlooked by the dramatic Quiraing mountain range, and in the right lighting, the crystal clear water can appear aqua and teal in colour. The fairy pools are very popular with walkers on the Isle of Skye. Many brave adventurers also take a dip in the icy waters if it's a warm day. You can access the fairy pools on a 1.5 mile or 2.4 kilometre hike from the fairy pools car park, which is near Glenbrittle. How long is the fairy pools walk on the Isle of Skye? I recommend leaving 1–2 hours at a minimum for the fairy pools walk. Push it up to 3 if you have more time on the Isle of Skye. Is the fairy pools walk difficult? I have to admit that the fairy pools hike is a lot easier now, as they have got rid of the big stepping stones to cross the river and replaced them with flat wooden bridges to walk over. What's the best time to visit the fairy pools on Skye? Personally, in summer I would try to avoid the middle of the day if you can, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., and avoid weekends. It's always quieter during the week, early morning or later in the afternoons, evenings. Sunrise or sunset would be also ideal for a more magical atmosphere. If you want to see more waterfalls, I would visit in the shoulder seasons of spring or autumn. This would be the best chance of decent weather with stronger rapids, deeper pools, and powerful waterfalls, but you may not get the sun, aqua colors, or visibility of the mountain range. If you don't mind a bit of ice and cold weather, you could visit in the wintertime. These waterfalls often freeze up, creating a magical winter wonderland.